How do you describe what good light even means? Now, I think we've done a good job so far in doing that, but let's just simplify it even further. Good light, what does that mean? Well, let's say, for example, if I look at the light on my hand, what am I looking for when I look at the light on my hand? In fact, you'll actually see me in many of the weddings included in this bundle. At times on location, I'll be looking at my hand and like, well, what am I looking for? It looks a little bit weird, doesn't it? Well, when someone looks iridescent, when someone looks like they've got a healthy tan, they've had a beautiful holiday, they just look glowing. Well, maybe the beautiful light is falling on them beautifully. In other words, they're iridescent, they're glowing. Maybe their skin looks very beautiful and saturated. So that's pretty much what I'm looking for. So whenever you're struggling with light and you're out on location and don't know what to do, and you're a bit tired and you're walking around, you're thinking, well, what do I do here? All I want you to do is look at your hand and then just follow along. What will happen is if you stand, let's say if it was a little bit hazy, it was overcast, and you couldn't quite see the direction of light, where is the sun behind those clouds? Don't really know. Stand there, look at your hand and do a 360. What will happen is your hand will go from flat to a little bit of contrast, to more contrast, to a beautiful shadow and so on. And even when you tilt your hand up, you see more of that iridescence, that more evidence of that direction of light. So I'm saying to you, it's just so easy to do that. And also, most light comes from up above, which means that most of us forget to bring the chin of the bride and or groom or anybody up a little bit because that's the actual direction of light. You'll often see my work, a signature to my work is actually in fact where I bring the chin up and I tilt the face. Why do I do that? Is because when the chin is up and I tilt the face, that allows a little bit of light to filter through right in the bridge of my nose, my eye socket, and it actually works really well. It's because when I bring my chin up and I tilt my face down, now my face becomes parallel to the ground. The ground cuts away light, therefore creating the shadow side, or as we call it, the short side or the narrow side. So it depends on what you want. How else can light be defined? What does good light mean? Well, here is the answer. Good light is either flattering, as in we want to make someone look beautiful and pretty and handsome, and or, it's an important one, and or it helps communicate the desired message from the artist to the viewer of the photograph. Now you might say, well, when would it be okay on a wedding day to actually not make someone flatter with the light? Well, probably never. So you wouldn't deliberately illuminate someone on a wedding day and make it look unflattering. That's just not cool. Because I've never met anyone who wants to look less attractive than they are, if that makes any sense, for want of a better phrase. In photography in general, I might not want flattery. I might want to actually execute a particular thing that I want to communicate to the viewer of the photograph. In this case, for example, you may have seen this before. This is basically a photograph of a homage to the Sin City movies. But you can see how the lighting is not pretty. The lighting is not attractive. So you would say that this is not flattering, but it does help communicate the message that I'm trying to convey to the viewer of the photograph, which is, of course, in this situation, is you. So remember that lighting is not just about flattery, it is all about what you're trying to say. Well, we've talked a bit about good light. What is the opposite? Well, I'm not going to say the word, although I've probably said it a few times in this bundle, but what is this kind of lighting? Well, it's funny because, you know, when I do a hands-on workshop, you know, often we'll have friends or friends of friends, or we'll have models or anything like that. And on this particular workshop that I did with my 20 students, one of the actual students turned to me and said, well, Jerry, I wish we had someone less attractive so you can show me how to make them look attractive. I'm saying, well, are you telling me that I can't make this girl look unattractive? And I said, well, no, she's gorgeous. She could look good anywhere. I'm like, let me show you a photograph of her looking unattractive. And there we are. Beautiful girl. We've got unflattering shadows. The texture of her skin doesn't look that great. And the next photograph that I took, literally the next photograph out of my camera, was the following one. And that was this. We're walking down the street. I saw the sun actually illuminate a fence of a house. That fence was made up of translucent glass. Translucent meaning the light travels through it, but you can't see through it. So I got the girl on the ground, turned her face to the light, and literally that was taken seconds after. So I don't care who you photograph and whether you have the pretty people or not, the fact is that it does take a photographer to bring out the best in them. And this is more behind the scenes of that particular environment. Of course, this is with her now husband as well. So it depends on what you're trying to say. That was the close-up of that particular shot as well. Now, a very, very important thing to understand, guys, is this. The more people you photograph, the less lighting options you have. Now, you might say, well, what does that mean? Well, you've probably seen the segments regarding light and patterns and different ways of shooting a face and things like that. But do you think that all those lighting patterns would have been possible with all of these people in this environment? Now, arguably, yes, I could have maybe used one flash on each of their faces, blended it afterwards in Photoshop. Who has time for that? I don't really know. All I know is that as you start to add more people, the lighting pattern on their faces is going to be different depending on the angle of their face, depending on what it is. In other words, if I have one light from the side here, some of these people are going to create a shadow on these guys. So that's going to be an issue. This lighting over here will make this split broad, would make this a profile shot, will make this a short side, would be open loop. All those lighting patterns that we discussed, and again, ignore the names, just know the more people that you have, family photographs, bridal party photographs, you are going to do well to recognize that open shade or a big window photograph from the front will be a little bit easier. In other words, so the lights that are illuminating me right now, there's actually 3 lights, 1, 2, 3, okay, 1, 2, 3. They're flooding me this way. Therefore, it's quite flattering. I've got one light from behind, giving me a bit of an accent light, as a bit of a hair and edge light. That just helps separate from the background, gives a nice production quality, fantastic. But this kind of light is great because whether I'm here, so whether I turn my face, so if we're looking at the big camera angle like this, whether I'm like this or this, the lighting is quite even. That's going to be very flattering, very complimentary, and a lot safer option. So it just depends on what you're trying to achieve. So remember that. Now, let's discuss the difference between lighting the female form and lighting the male form. Remember, guys, this is not an absolute. This is basically a guideline. I told you earlier in earlier segments that what I'm telling you are no absolutes. These are not rules per se. Some are mathematical and some are rules and some just can't be broken because it's pure science. But in this case, I'm about to tell you how do I light the female form on a wedding day traditionally, and how do I actually illuminate the male form if I have a choice. So, lighting the female form, what do we do? And I'm not saying, guys, that this is an absolute. Remember, these are common denominators. After this many years of photographing, I believe this to be the case most of the time with most brides, and that is this. Turn the body away from the light and turn the face back into the light. So let's talk about this. In fact, I'm going to show you a video right now of me doing this exact thing. This way, that's it. Come a few steps this way. Beautiful and turn. So here I'm basically setting her up. There's obviously light coming through from the side. We've got light filtering sort of everywhere. And as you can start to see, there's basically a shadow on the camera right or her left. So what I do is, and of course posing we'll talk about in different segments, but I'm actually getting her to put all her weight on her back leg, bring her shoulder back, slightly bend her arm and her wrist, turn her body away from the light source, which is basically the light filtering through, call it a glorified veranda there, through those pillars. I get her to lean forward and turn her face back into the light. So what have we done? We've created beautiful texture, depth, dimension and form on her body. There's a shadow on her cleavage which makes the bust look fuller, which is great. And then we turn her face into the light to a point where the eye socket that was away from the camera is now the closest to the camera, where that eye socket is completely lit, just when it's completely lit, and then therefore that giving us a shadow on that side of the face. So I'm not saying I do this all the time, I'm saying I do this most of the time. Let's look at another example. We turn the bride away from that window light and turn the face back into the window light. So now, although white, we see all that texture on her dress, and now I'm shooting her on the shadow side of the face. Well, I've pretty much created the shadow side of her face. Similar here, turn the body away from the light, turn the face back in. She has a modest bust line, hashtag small. We have a shadow on the bust line, it actually makes her bust look fuller. The shadow now also creates that beautiful shadow on her shoulder. We turn the face back into the light until this eye is completely lit, therefore giving us a shadow on the nose, on the cheekbones, and on the jawline, therefore looking beautiful. You could be photographing from a slight higher angle, and she could be sitting on a chair. The same thing happens. Turn the body away from the light, face back in. How much do I turn the body away from the light? How much do I turn the face back in? Let's reiterate that again. So you might start from the light side, or you might start from the shadow side. What I encourage, get the bride to turn her body completely to the shade. Then turn her body towards the light, towards the light, towards the light, until a shadow starts to appear in the cleavage and the middle of the dress. Now, you've got to think of the body independent of the face and the head. So the body stays here, the light's coming from this side. We turn the body, turn the body, turn the body until we just get a highlight and a shadow in the middle of the dress, and then turn her face back in. Now we've got beautiful depth and dimension, and we're giving beautiful texture, shape and form. Same thing could be said when we're photographing complete sun. Turn the body away from the light, turn the face back in. Even wearing black, you can still see a bit of a shadow on the bust line there as well, even on the legs and all that kind of thing. Even lying down again, I'm shooting from a bird's eye view. The light's coming here and filtering through this way. I've turned the body away from the light to a point where I've got highlighted shadow on her dress, turn her face into the light, and now I've got highlight and shadow. And the more highlight and shadow you see in a photograph, the deeper it becomes and more three-dimensional. Let's have a look at this. Now, this goes against a little bit what I basically said, but I want to show you the anomaly. And this is the anomaly. Now, yes, she's wearing a darker dress, so it's a little bit harder to see. But we said, well, Jerry, you just said turn the body away from the light and the face back in. Well, now she's turning her body completely towards the light source. Well, why is that any different? Well, why it's different is I'm turning her body so much to the light source where I now see a shadow on the middle of her body. Therefore, half the body's in shadow, half the body's in light. If, for example, she was a slightly plus-size bride, okay? I'm going to say slightly, as in just a normal person. Not skinny, not overweight, just regular person like you and me. And if she turned her body towards the light source and we photographed mainly a big, broad part of her body in the light, that would make her look bigger and broader. So what we want to do is either turn the body away from the light source and the face back in, or turn the body so much to the light source where we're now getting a shadow in the middle of the body. Your instinct is going to tell you different when you're actually working on location. So let's say, for example, I'm the bride, here is a window. I could turn the bride's body to the window and I'm making her look bigger and broader. Now, and your instinct is telling you, illuminate the bride from there. And my previous analogy that hopefully you've already heard is, I liken light to water. So if you turn the body towards the light so much so, you might get this water flooding the bride. Now, if I turn the body away from the light, away from that shower head, then now I'm getting a little bit less light on the cleavage, less light on the body, which therefore means I'm creating a shadow, which means that I'm slimming that person and giving more depth, dimension and form. And if I turn her face back in, it works well. So if you are actually photographing a really slim bride, you might deliberately position her body towards the window. So in this case, again, she's deliberately profiled, she's like literally perpendicular to the light from our perspective, and we create a shadow in the middle of her body, beautiful cheekbones, beautiful jawline. And in this case, I'm going even further. I'm turning her body so much away from that light source, but shooting from behind. So I've got the back mainly in shadow, a hint of her bust. Very important that I keep that arm in the middle of her waist so it doesn't actually hide the thinnest part of her waist, and a triangular piece of light through her arm again so I can see a silhouette of her shape. Her face looks beautiful. I'm getting a bit of cheekbone shadow there and jawline, looking fantastic. Now, looking at this particular camera here, you could imagine that there are certain angles that are considered more masculine and more feminine. Although the light here is quite flat and flooded just to sort of even out this production value of what we're doing right now, it's considered quite feminine to do this. So there's the camera angle. I'm turning my body this way, and I bring my chin to my outer shoulder and my eyes back. That's considered quite feminine, even more so with the shoulder up. Now, so if you want femininity and want to make someone look really beautiful and got a bit of a style, then that would be really good. Front on's fine, but you're making the bride, the girl, whoever you're photographing, look quite broad because that's at her broadest. If I turn the shoulders and then turn the face back in this way and then eyes back, then that's going to be very feminine, as with this girl right now. Now, on the other hand, if I'm photographing a guy, let's do this. Rather than the chin to the shoulder, I could basically just open up, keep the actual face clamped there, and then all of a sudden, I can actually photograph the same look per se, but I'm just moving the shoulders. So let me explain again. Didn't quite get to that explanation properly. So chin to the outer shoulder. Let's leave the face there. Let's just move the body. Whoop. And then now it's more feminine, more masculine. So masculine, feminine, masculine, feminine. Let's look at the differences and let's see how it works in comparison. Just before we do that, I want to explain to you this. If you photograph the female form front on, at least use side lighting to show shape and depth that the angle is not. Perfect example here. The bride is perfectly facing me, right? Facing me perfectly, I'm actually photographing her at her widest. I'm not saying she's wide, but I'm saying this is the widest that I'll actually see her. If I have to do that, if the light comes from the side as it is right now, window light, I'm getting this beautiful texture, depth, dimension, and form, and the shape of her bust where the angle is not doing that. Probably more obvious in a somewhat sort of nude form here. We've got the light coming from the side. I am shooting her front on, and it's important to know that when that happens, we are getting that beautiful shape from the highlight, shadow, and so on and so forth. Here's a very important lesson, guys, that if you want to emphasize something, you push it towards the camera and towards the light. If you want to de-emphasize something, you push it away from the camera and away from the light. In other words, so this is somewhat, it's more of a posing thing, but it is combined with lighting as well. Do you see how she's shifting her hips? She's putting all her weight on this leg. So she's shifting her butt away from the light, de-emphasizing her shape. She's got a great figure, she gets away with it. If she shifted her butt towards the light, it would actually make her butt look fuller. And if that's what you want, which of course is, it's fair game right now. As of this recording, we're in 2020 and, you know, big butts are in right now, which I think is great. Beautiful, big shapes, different shapes, odd shapes are being celebrated everywhere, which I absolutely love. But you just have to know who you're photographing, what they want, and then execute accordingly. Now, how do you photograph the male form? Well, I slightly alluded to it already, giving you a bit of a foundation, but that is this. Whereas with the female form, we said turn the body away from the light and the face back in. Not an absolute, but a common denominator. With the male form, we turn the body and the face back into the light. So what am I basically saying? Well, he's turning his body towards the light. That makes him look bigger and broader. And then, let's say if we start with his face in shadow, turn his face to a point where this eye socket gets completely lit. Look at the difference between the chin to the outer shoulder and then the chin away from the shoulder. Feminine, masculine. So the more you look at this, more you understand. Now, he's a small guy, as in not so broad, but positioning his body and turning his shoulder blades towards the light makes him look bigger and broader, and then turning his face into the light. In this case, I've got Rembrandt lighting on him. Looks really cool. I am not saying, though, I never do this for a guy, as in I never bring the chin to the outer shoulder. All that's happening here is I'm shooting him a little bit flatter than actually shooting him on this side and bringing his chin closer to his shoulder. Otherwise, then in fact, yes, it would look a little bit feminine. But just remember, there are no absolutes depending on the person, the body type, the shape, the age, your angle, the perspective, the compression of the lens. All these things will make a difference to what you do. Just trust your gut. If you think someone looks a little bit bigger, they actually are, they probably do. If you think someone looks a little bit, sexier and slimmer in this particular area, they probably will. And then that's what you do. So take your time, slow down, look at the person that you're photographing, diagnose them, and realize the difference between photographing the female form and photographing the male form. To finish off our conversation, I want to talk to you just about the luxury of shadows. The luxury of shadows are very, very important, because when you start adding shadows to an image, as in the subtraction of light, then that gives us that depth, dimension, and form. So you can add shadows to the female form, the male form, you can increase shadows in different ways, but ultimately, what's luxurious about these photographs that we're seeing is not so much the light, it's actually where the shadows are. The shadows give us the cheekbones, the shadows give us the depth and the shape of her face and her body. It's the shadows that show us her beautiful shoulder line. It's the shadows that actually show us the cute little dimples when she's giggling and laughing. It's all of those things that give us that sense of luxury. So remember, when you walk into, say, a bedroom of a bride's house, for example, I don't want you to think that you can't move anything around. Like, this lamp is on, those overhead lights are on, the windows are drawn, the drapes are drawn a certain way. You walk in, you use what you've got. What I prefer you to do, walk into a bedroom, turn off all the lights, close the blinds, and then open up one by one. Now you can control it like a studio. The difference is that the lights are already existing in the one place. You've just turned them off. Yes, have I been known to move a bedside lamp or move different things to create different light sources? Absolutely. But at the very minimum, walk into a room, turn off the lights, open up one by one, and then depending on your angle and perspective and compression, you can change the look and the destiny of that particular situation dramatically. In our next segment, what we're going to do is we're going to break down different light sources, which I'm really excited about sharing with you. We're going to look at anything from sunlight, window light, open shade, continuous light, off-camera flash, on-camera, you name it, we're going to cover it. We're going to show you very much in theory and also practice by showing you many photographs and what these different light sources do. But please be sure to look at the actual weddings included in this bundle so you can actually see me on location using everything that we're about to explain in a real-world situation. And remember, repetition, experience, and practice will be your best teacher. And hopefully you can take this experience, you can practice it, and then you're on the wedding day, and then all of a sudden, I can't believe it, I've got this, and you do.